Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Dustin Kreis, and today we are going to do a game discussion. But before we do that, we're going to talk about. You might notice the lighting's a little bit different, the backdrop, maybe the games behind me are a little bit in different places. I did move. We are in the house now. The game room is set up in the basement. It's not very exciting for a game room tour. It's basically just shelves around a basement. But maybe as I get this place a little bit more put together, somewhere down the road, I will do a game room tour, even though this game room is not very, in terms of other people's game rooms, it's not very pleasing to the eye, I guess. But anyway, that's not why we're here. We are here because, as you saw in the title, I played a game in a series that I pretty much swore off. And basically, the reason why I played the game was because a friend here in town, we were playing Destiny together. Destiny kind of pissed him off because he didn't get any loot after a 6-hour raid, and he just like, all right, I'm done with this. So we can't play Destiny together anymore. So he'd come over every now and then, and we'd play this game co-op. And that game is Resident Evil 5. And if you know me, I'm pretty much done with the Resident Evil series. I played Resident Evil 1 through 4 and all the games before 4 and enjoyed them. Took a big sabbatical from the series. And it wasn't really until I played Resident Evil Revelations on the Wii U, and I really just decided between that game, Shadows of the Damned, and then The Enemy Within, I've really just decided that that third-person survival horror action shooter genre is just not my genre anymore. I don't like the precision aiming and all that stuff, and it's just a personal thing with me now. It just feels really unbalanced, and I don't care for it. So, this was a game that I pretty much said is just going to remain on my shelf because I have no intentions of playing it. But at the same time, if I take it and trade it in at GameStop, I'm going to get like $1 for it. So it's like, it doesn't even, there's no reason to take it in and trade it in, I guess. It's better on my shelf, I guess, than trading in at GameStop. Although, I might still do that. Who knows? But anyway, we threw it in, and while I had fun playing the game, that fun really stemmed from the fact that I was playing co-op with somebody. And the game itself, I didn't out and out hate until the very end of the game, but at the same time, it didn't do anything. Like, I wasn't like chomping at the bit to play the next time. Like, he would come over, we'd drink a little bit, and then we'd throw it in and kind of play it. But it wasn't something I was like sitting there like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for him to come back over so we can, play the next couple levels so I can see what was happening next. It was more just sort of a resignation, like, okay, let's throw it in. But, as a co-op experience, sitting there, on the couch with another person playing a game, it was a bit fun. But on the whole, I didn't really care for Resident Evil 5. And unless the Resident Evil 2 HD remake is something really special, I might still just be done with Resident Evil. It was a big series back in the day for me, and then I just fell off the bandwagon. Somewhere it lost me, and then it's never been able to bring me back in. That being said, looking at my PS1 games, I do really have a strong desire to go back and play Resident Evil 2 again, because that's still, to this day, my favorite Resident Evil. Is my first Resident Evil. It's the one that sticks with me the most, and I really enjoy that one. Whereas Resident Evil 5 was, mainly a big, forgettable experience. And I don't even know where to begin with this review, because it's probably going to be one of those videos that gets thumbed down a lot, because for some reason Resident Evil it still seems like Resident Evil is one of those sacred cows, and if you attack the sacred cow, then people come out of the woodwork to give you thumbs down. I don't know what it is, but Resident Evil 5, while being a very competent game, is just not something that lights my fire anymore. So If you guys want to tune out now, long story short, did not enjoy this. But let's go ahead and get into it and sort of talk about things. The Resident Evil timeline is so convoluted now. I really have no idea where exactly this game takes place in the timeline. But it's obviously after Umbrella has gone belly up, and the T and the G virus are no longer, the big games in town. Now it's this new... I remember something about the Progenitor virus, but I think that was Resident Evil 4. I'm not exactly sure what they're calling the new bioweapon in this game, because I'm going to be honest with you. As much as we watched the cutscenes, which we did, we watched all the cutscenes while playing this game. I literally can't tell you like what's going on during this game. It was so just like, okay, I guess that's what we're doing now. Like this, that it was in my brain. And I beat this game like maybe a week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. And I've just been so busy I can't do the game discussion. But it's such a bland, uninteresting story that it's already gone out of my brain. Like my brain just has no capacity to hold that in there because it's just so like every other Resident Evil game. I just did not care about the storyline. But picks up, I'm assuming, a few years after Resident Evil 4 with Chris heading to Africa to investigate these new incidences of this bioweapon being out there, and he teams up with a woman named Shiva, and somehow Wesker once again is back from the dead. The guy seems to die like all the time, or at least turn into a huge monster all the time, and then all of a sudden turn back into a human. But Wesker is still around, and you just run through all these stages. You kill a bunch of zombie-esque characters, and then eventually you start getting to more mutant esque characters, and then by the end you hit a final boss where the difficulty spikes through the roof, and then you get angry and you quit the game. That's my experience with Resident Evil. It's been my experience with Resident Evil for a couple games now. You just kind of do the same shit over and over again, and then you get to the end, and then the boss is so fucking cheap that you're just like, all right, I don't care about the storyline, so I don't need to see the end of the game. And that was how it kind of went with us. He talked about this game, my friend, talked about this game and talked about really liking it. And then as we were playing it, he was kind of like, oh, God, this is not as good as I remember it. And it's kind of a case study for why I never, ever, and I got it setting, I'm looking at it right now, I got it setting right there. I never, ever want to go back and play Resident Evil 4 again. I kind of covered this in a video I did about Metal Gear Solid, where sometimes a game is best left as a memory, and revisiting it actually ruins your opinion of it. Like right now, Resident Evil 4 is still in my brain a fantastic game. Fantastic, but I feel like if I go back and play it, I'm going to have the same experience I had with this and Resident Evil Revelations, where I just don't care anymore, and it just doesn't interest me anymore. I don't know. There's just something about this game that just did not do it for me. It doesn't reinvigorate my interest in the series. It actually kind of just says, yep, I'm actually pretty much done with that. And the storyline, like I said, in and out. In one ear, out the other. I didn't care to retain it. It's been 2 weeks since I beat the game. It's going to go back on the shelf, and I'm probably never going to think about Resident Evil 5 ever again. Gameplay wise, if you've played Resident Evil 4, if you've played The Enemy Within, you know what to expect here. It's that over the shoulder third person perspective, where you draw up and aim, and you have your laser pointer, and you have to make those very precise shots, and while you're aiming, you can't move. And it's one of those things that just drives me nuts now. It just drives me nuts, because I've played other third person shooters where I can strafe around, and like Metal Gear Solid 4 was amazing for that. Like you could aim and still move around, and you just felt like a badass running through that game. And then you get to like a Resident Evil game, and you have to stop and hold your position and aim, and you're just like, oh my God, this is so fucking slow. Like why, as much as they talk about Resident Evil going towards more of an action series, that planting your feet right in the ground and aiming still just drives you absolutely nuts. But the big draw to this game, and the big thing with this game, is its co-op nature. The entire time you're playing the game, you do have a partner with you, and part of me sits there and thinks, oh my god, this is going to be one fucking game-long escort mission, because Resident Evil was terrible with escort missions. I still remember that's the worst part of Resident Evil 4, is the time that you had to drag the president's daughter around and defend her, and it's just awful. But actually, the mechanic works very well. And from what I hear, because I've never played this game single player, the AI is not terribly bad. Like, your partner character will take care of themselves. But the big thing with having two players is you have to kind of think about puzzles in a little bit of a different manner. And that is cool. I think it is cool about, having to coordinate with another person to solve these puzzles. But at the same time, maybe it's because this was the first game that they really tried doing this with. It feels a little undercooked, and I feel like some other games kind of make you do the partner thing a little bit better. But that being said, that was a cool aspect of the game. It was fun to play through the game with another person. Would I ever go back and play this single player? Hell no. I have no interest in playing this single player. But if you've played a Resident Evil, one of the modern Resident Evils, or The Enemy Within, or Shadows of the Damned, or any of the other games in this sort of little subgenre, you kind of know what to expect. You're going to be overwhelmed with enemies. You're going to have to make very precise shots. Ammo can be scarce, although you can replay missions in this game to acquire more ammo. And that's kind of game breaking in a way, because you can go back and replay old levels, get treasure, sell the treasure, buy upgrades to your gun, max out your guns. I mean, there is a sort of an RPG element where you can grind up your characters a little bit, but then you get to the final boss, and it doesn't matter. You can have all your weapons, maxed out, and the final boss is still just a nightmare to beat. Like, not only are you fighting the final boss, you're also fighting the stage, you're fighting the controls, and it just is not a fun experience. And this is something like, it's not like Dark Souls, where I didn't understand the game, and then I gave it another shot, wrapped my head around it, and actually really started to like it. I understand Resident Evil, it's just you get to those final bosses, and they are so overwhelmingly just cheap that eventually we just kind of looked at each other and said, we're done. I really have no desire to see the end of this, because I really don't care about the storyline or the characters or anything that's going on. And I'm just kind of done. We'll find something else to play. So yeah, we decided to put it up after that. But if you're a fan of that style of game, you'll probably enjoy Resident Evil 5. As for the graphics are actually pretty good. It's a little bit dated. When does the game come out? It's so hard to find the dates on these fucking Xbox games. I don't know. Maybe 2009. That's the last date I can see on here. 2009. So this game is, maybe about 8 years old, or 7 years old. Shows a little bit, but it still looks actually pretty good. The weird thing about, I don't know, there's just a weird thing about the way characters' mouths move in video games. They just don't move very naturally. And when people smile, like their teeth, it looks like they have metallic teeth. Deadly Premonition had that quite a bit. But I forgave that game because it was obviously, a lower budget title, whereas Resident Evil was a big AAA flagpole title. The animations are a little stiff, I guess. But looking at the graphics are pretty good. The environments are pretty varied. You'll see a lot of different places, although you kind of get sick of seeing swamp areas after a while, and there's a lot of areas in this game that are swamp-esque, and it's just, we're in another swamp area. Okay. All right. I guess that's what we're doing now. But yeah, graphically, the game is good, but it is, several years old, so you'll have that. Audio-wise, the voice acting. I almost feel like Resident Evil cannot have good voice acting. Like, it has to be stiff, it has to be over the top, and that's part of the experience. And Resident Evil 5 doesn't let down in that. Chris and Wesker are just insanely over the top. A lot of the other characters you meet in the game are insanely over top. Maybe Shiva is the only character that actually has a slightly decent voice acting, acting. Everything else is that typical Resident Evil over the top, sort of melodrama-esque. So, I mean, in relation to the rest of the series, it works very well. But you are kind of getting into the area of overacting and stilted voice acting. Music-wise, again, it's one of those things where it was in one ear, out the other. I mean, it's very effective for when you're playing. It sounds good for the areas you're in. But I'm not going to be rushing out and buying the Resident Evil 5 soundtrack, which I can't say that about other games. Like Resident Evil 2, I love the soundtrack in it. Maybe it's just it's probably going to be one of those situations where I go back and I play the PlayStation 1 version of Resident Evil 2 and just be like, oh my god, this game is so terrible. But, for me, the first game I played in the series was like perfect, pitch perfect. And then Resident Evil 3 was a little bit of a disappointment. Resident Evil 4, when I played it, was awesome. And then, did I play Code Veronica? When did I play Code Veronica? That was Dreamcast. But it was also on, was it PS2 that they put Code Veronica on? I can't remember if I played Resident Evil 4 before I played Code Veronica. Yeah, Code Veronica X was on the PS2. But I loved Code Veronica as well. Actually, Code Veronica is probably one of my favorite ones in the series as well. But yeah, I don't know. Something about the series, I fell out of love with it. And maybe it's because I discovered Silent Hill. And for me, I don't know, Silent Hill, which it's kind of fallen off the wagon a little bit. I didn't finish Downpour. I found Downpour just to be just not good. But I still really loved Homecoming. And I still have some other Silent Hill games to play, but I liked Silent Hill's aesthetic more than I liked Resident Evil's jump scares and the movement more towards an action game. So I don't know. Maybe it's just something where I just need to not play a Resident Evil game ever again, because I feel like that's what I do. I get on here and I talk about Resident Evil and I talk about how much I don't like it, and then eventually somewhere down the road I'm like, well, let's give the series one more shot, and then I realize I still don't like this series anymore. So, kind of a disappointing video, especially if you're a Resident Evil 5 fan. I'm sorry. If you like the game, that's perfectly fine. It's just it doesn't jive with me anymore, and I don't really care about the series. And it kind of helps fuel that dislike of Capcom and pretty much everything they do. The big controversy over Street Fighter V and all that, and the missing modes and things like that, and their treatment of Mega Man over the years, and they're just not the company that they used to be. And let's pump out some more Resident Evil games, and maybe people will like us again. Well, it's not gonna work for me. So I have absolutely no desire to get Resident Evil 6 and play it, because I hear that's even worse. I have no desire to play... The only Resident Evil game I have a desire to play is the HD remake of 2, and we will watch how that goes before I, plop money down for it. But, Resident Evil 5, it's not a terrible game. I've been railing against it the entire time. It's a very competent game. It's just not very memorable. It's... I guess the term would be mediocre. It's just, it goes through the paces, it does what it does well, but it's not something that's going to light your fire, especially if you're like me and you've fallen out of love with the series. So anyway, I don't really feel like belaboring this point anymore. I think this is really where the divisiveness on the series really began, and don't need to get 6, have no interest in getting 6. Or any other future entries in the series. So I think we can just call it done with Resident Evil. So if you're a Resident Evil fan and you're really hoping that I review another game in the series, sorry. But anyway, that is it for this video. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you next time.